As I mentioned earlier, this is Shabbat Shirah. This is the Shabbat of Song. This is the Shabbat of Song. So it's wonderful that tonight we celebrate Debbie Friedman. It is the Shabbat of Song because of what Jack read earlier in the service, the Shirah. He read the Shirah, the song at the sea. So I want to offer a few words of thinking about what this means for us in this moment in time in which we find ourselves. Beethoven said, music is the mediator between the spiritual and the sensual life. We understand that music does something that very few other things do, of course, because it provides a connection to the spiritual. It is, you can't touch it, you can't see it exactly. As Joey Weissenberg, who one would have to say is one of the generations following in Debbie Friedman's footsteps, he wrote, music is the most immaterial and ephemeral of all the art forms. We can't see music. We can't grasp it in our hands, but we can feel it working through us and the world. Music represents our connection to the divine, to each other, and to everything. Music is a wordless prayer that opens up our imagination to the divine source of all life. In Talmud Brachot, it says, where there is song, there is prayer. I think I don't need to convince anybody here of the truth of those statements. We've all felt it in all different forms of music. And honestly, it doesn't really matter which genre. We all might have a personal preference, but we have all experienced music as a source of connecting to something way beyond our own lives. Of music being the place in which we experience the divine, the transcendent, and yet you can't touch it exactly. I'm always so moved because there are so many parts of God that are present whenever music is created. First of all, it's the composer. The composer has the genius, the given talents by God to write music. Then somebody has the genius and the talents given by God to create musical instruments. Then somebody has the genius and talents given by God to take that musical instrument, take those dots on a paper, and create a living, breathing musical music. It's incredible. And then those of us get to listen and take it in and be transported. There are so many different places in which the divine exists. So this Shabbat Shirah, this Shabbat of Song, celebrates a song that's sung at a very difficult moment in time. This is not an empty song of celebration. The Shirah, as Jack laid it so beautifully earlier, is what's sung by the Jews, the Israelites, as they're fleeing from the Egyptians. They're barely out of slavery. They get to the sea, they get through the sea, they sing these words, and when we get to the other side, Miriam takes out her timbrel famously, and she and the women dance. Music and art, dance, celebratory expressions of prayer that words alone won't do. There are some things that have to be embodied in dance and expressed in music. But we know that at that very moment when Miriam is singing and dancing and the Israelites are reciting the Shirah, there's a lot to celebrate because they got out of slavery. But we know that there are many more years in the desert, many more disappointments and failures and moments of deep fear. There will be moments very soon after the singing of this song where the Israelites beg to go back to slavery. They beg to go back. They say to Moses, what are you doing? We're lost, we don't know where we're going. Let us go back to where we were, where it was safe, where we knew we were going to have a meal. We knew what the monster that was oppressing us was. It's better to know than to not know. And they persevered through those many, many years in the desert. But we don't talk about the Shirah, the song when the Israelites entered the promised land. That doesn't really exist in our tradition. There is a song near the end of the book, but it's a song of blessing. But the song that we celebrate as the song of gratitude, as the song of sheer exaltation, is this Shirah, this song of the sea. It's a song that's sung in the middle of the danger, in the middle of the terror, in the middle of the anxiety that it's not going to work out, not when it's all nicely tied up with a bow. I'm reminded of a story when I was in the Dominican Republic with the American Jewish World Service, that some of the Dominicans of Haitian descent told us a story that Haitians, when there were those series of horrible earthquakes that took place, would leave their houses and go out into the street after each terrible shake happened. And they were terrifying. Buildings were falling. It was a terrifying moment. They would stand in the street and they would sing. And one person would start a song and somebody else in the street would pick it up and they would sing. And it would strengthen them. We all know of the power of music in the civil rights movement. And John Lewis describes what it was like to prepare to go into those Greensboro Woolworth counters in order to sit down, and they knew they were going to be beaten, and they would sing to center themselves and prepare themselves to respond not with violence, but with moral, clean purity. They would sing. We know the power of those songs. We knew that Dr. King at these sessions, and the night before, they would encounter white supremacy and dogs and water cannons. They would sing. There is a power that singing does in the middle of difficult moments, singing of joy, singing of faith. We know that Dr. King read Psalm 27 and maybe even sang it before the rabbis in St. Augustine went out to do a civil disobedience in a terribly difficult and frightening time. We are in a moment so similar to the Israelites at the sea. For 4 years, shocked as we were by the ascension of Donald Trump as president and watching the rise of white supremacy and anti-Semitism being unleashed in this country, we had fear that we didn't know could exist for many of us. Many of us felt so shaken watching those images of the torchlit rallies and the anti-Semitism and the Islamophobia and the hatred of women. We watched it just roll over us and we felt dirty and full of despair. And week after week, we would come to shul and services, and I would try and find ways to strengthen us so that our spirits were strong to withstand the tsunami that our ark was encountering. And we've managed with much hard work, and we celebrated all of that hard work last week. And it's not just about an election or a president. It's about how we transform the society in which we live. So we are like the Israelites. We feel so much relief day after day after day. We hear of executive orders and of firing those who should not have been in positions, getting them out, putting in competent, smart people who reflect America into jobs that we can know that they know how to do. Every day we wake up and we say, what will happen today, with a sense of excitement that there is turning around of some of the fascistic policies of these last 4 years. And we are like Miriam and Aaron and Moses at the sea, singing this song of celebration. But like them, we know that we're not out of danger entirely. We know that there are many years, many deserts ahead of us. A recent poll said that 70% of registered Republicans do not believe that this was a fair and free election. Just take that in. Only 3 weeks ago, a mob stormed the Capitol building of the United States with a goal of assassinating the Speaker of the United States and hanging the Vice President of the United States and attacking other members of Congress. The city had to have an inauguration with 25,000 American troops to keep it peaceful. And we watch with growing unease as those who represent white supremacy, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, and anti-immigrants malice whipping themselves into a fury that their candidate is not the president of the United States. We have members of Congress wanting to go onto the floor of the Congress with a gun. And some members of Congress who are Republican, there are some who have actually threatened members of Congress who are Democrats. Where will we go from here? Chaos or community? Martin Luther King famously said in his final book in 1967. Shabbat Shirah, the Shabbat of Song. So we know from the story of this week, as Jack read it to us, we know we have a long distance to go. And we know there are terrible, fearful days ahead. But we do what Miriam and Aaron and Moses and all the women did, which is we stop for a moment to celebrate. We need to re-nourish ourselves, not because we don't know what the work will be like ahead. We have to do it knowing that we're not out of the woods, we're not out of the desert, we're not out of the midbar, we're nowhere near the promised land. Each and every one of us is going to be called upon to do very hard work in these next weeks and months and years ahead. But we are going to do it with song. We are going to do it inspired by music and prayer. We are going to take all that we've learned in these years and understand that our souls are stronger than anything they can throw at us. And we will march together, one step at a time. We stand on the shoulders of people like Debbie Friedman. We look at the faces of those children reading a prayer for our country that they wrote. And we say to them, we are in this together. Let's sing, let's dance, and let's create life every single minute of the way. And I pray for all of you. Stay close to the music because that's where you'll find God. Stay close to the dance because that's how you'll experience God. Stay close to the voices of the children. I pray for each of you to have a Shabbat of celebration, of music, of art, of good friendship, and know that we're all in this together. Shabbat Shalom.